Hey guys, Tactical.
Nicole Sauce.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's been a long week.
Yeah, no kidding. I
And
almost didn't say kidding.
yeah, and you're having a long day too.
Yeah,
But
long week.
yeah, number 11. This is the fun one, I think.
Principle 11. How many weeks did we argue about this?
Oh, I was actually thinking about that earlier. I think it took me 2 or 3 days to write everything on the initial draft, and then like another 2 or 3 days for revisions on everything. And then this one was like 2 weeks later. I still haven't come up with a final draft. And God only knows how much time we spent like on Zello going back and forth over this one.
Yeah, this one's hard.
Yeah. So balancing logic and emotion for any form of decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's something that, like, within people's brains, I think that you have a dominating thing, one or the other, and people tend to just go, like, if they're on this side, they tend to just make decisions based on this. If they're on this side, they make decisions based on this, and they don't cross reference anything, and you should.
Yes. And see, logical friend, meet emotional friend.
Exactly. And how many conversations have we had about stuff like that?
A lot, because I do use you as my check when I don't want to make a purely emotional decision.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the flip side of that for me because I mean my brain is predominantly logic, and it's why I don't like emotions, and I tend to go more down a logical path. And so every now and then I got to do a gut check and be like, you know, my desire is to go into work and lay into somebody, but emotionally, is that the best course of action?
Right. Or logically, this is the best life choice, but am I going to be miserable doing it?
Yes. So, I mean, I think it is kind of a balancing act, and I think it's a balancing act that most people don't think about. So, and just to use a simple example, you know, purchasing something. Right now, I have a need for a new cell phone. Now, my cell phone still works, so it still does its job, but I would like to get a new one because it's giving me a little bit of grief. And but due to the circumstances that I'm in right now financially, when I apply logic to this, it's like my phone still works.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in a well, not a tight situation financially, but I need to make my money last as long as I can going forward. So financially, it doesn't really make sense for me to go purchase a new phone when I have one that works. My emotion says I want to smash this thing with a hammer, but logic dictates that if I smash it with a hammer, I'm gonna be a couple of weeks without a phone, and then like I gotta spend a lot of money on a new one,
Yeah.
so forth and so on.
And I mean, I've seen people do that in rage. Like literally they take their phone and they're mad at whoever they were talking to and they throw it and their phone breaks. And I'm like, well, they want $600.
Yeah,
Like what, why did you think that was okay? Whatever. Um, on
I've
the flip side,
at least normally been pretty good about waiting until I get the replacement phone, and then taking the one that I'm pissed off at to the range and shooting it with a 12 gauge.
okay, so you do save it up.
A little
See,
bit.
I have a box right over here. It's why I need shelves in my office because right now they're piled on each other. And it's a box of mostly dead phones. They're not quite dead all the way, but they were dead enough that they were no longer working. And I keep those because when this puppy goes, it's going to go all the way. And then I activate one of those phones for a day or two while I figure out my new phone situation.
Yeah.
But that means I have like iPhone 4s over here.
Yeah. Backups to the backups to the backups, right?
Yep. Yep.
What is it? Two is one is none. 10's
Yeah.
even better.
Yeah, well, I've got like 5. No, I probably have 3 phones. Every so often, I give one to somebody, or I'll get into it and I'll be like, "Oh, I remember all those pictures I never saved anywhere." That's always fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, with this one, I think it's really difficult for most people because they have a predominant trait, either the logic or the emotion. And like if you take an MBTI test, like if I take one, I'm like 85% logic. So it's really hard for me to tap that emotional side because the other side of my brain is being like, no, this is the dominant, this is where we're going to go with this.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the advent of this. So originally, this principle was use logic for everything, right?
Pretty much.
And I was like, but what if you use logic for the person you marry and you don't actually love them emotionally in the right kind of way to be married? You're going to have a really long dead marriage. And then you were quiet.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to remember the exact wording that I used, but it was something along the lines of like, decisions should be based on logic and that's about it.
Yes.
Remove emotion from the equation. But I mean, as we started talking about it over the next couple of weeks, like, you know, you start to realize that, yes, the logical side is my predominant trait, but there is still emotional stuff underlying. So, you know, charity is another good example of you see a hurricane tear something up and you want to help out, you know, well, that's something that is based on emotion. It's not based on logic. And I think where people run into problems is when they don't balance the two. So, you know, if you're basing solely on logic, you're going to be like, no, they should have been prepared for that and screw them. If you're going strictly off of emotion, you might wind up being like, oh, I need to do something right now. Let's go Red Cross. Let me give $20,000 to the Red Cross. Is that a good decision? How much money do you have in the bank?
Yeah.
$20,000, you might not want to give $20,000 to the Red Cross.
You might not want to give anything to the Red Cross, but that's also a different story.
Yeah, I was about to go there too. CAC, Citizens Assisting Citizens, is the organization you want to donate money to for that.
Well, yeah, because it actually gets to the people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that means like holding your horses, right? So we were talking before this. I was on the Zello channel listening to somebody who I am still angry with for other reasons be rude to the channel owner, PA. And I kept hearing the guy be rude, be rude, be rude, be rude. And I was like, I want to call him on it, but it might be an emotional decision. And I was like, my face is red. That's probably, so I hit you up and I said, you know, hey, should I call him on it because he's being a jerk to PA? And what did you tell me?
My immediate response was apply principle number 11. And then my follow-up was, A, is this decision based on the fact that there's conflict in between the two of you? Or is it because he's doing something that he shouldn't and you want to call him on it? And the second point that I made with that one was because there's a conflict in between the two of you, is he going to listen if you say something? Are
Yeah,
you the best person to say something to him?
are you the best messenger? And I'm like, probably not, but somebody needs to talk to him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, that also, I mean, that's a whole nother point that I don't think that we've really talked about is the fact that, you know, people have different perspectives, you know, like you pointed out at the beginning, logical and emotional. And it's a good counterbalance to sound stuff like that off of other people.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the emotional split second decision is the best thing to do. And I find that is, you know, in a, like the other day, the emotional decision I made in a split second had a lot to do with a toddler about to run into a road. It was also the logical decision, grab toddler, but we live in a society where you touch other people's kids and they can sue you, right? But I'm not going to let a kid die. And that was more emotion and instinct than anything else when I grabbed the kid. And his mom's like, that's okay. He wouldn't have gone through the door. And I'm like, well, I couldn't tell that. And I was standing by the door and there were cars out there. So, and she wasn't mad. But I think when I think about Principle 11, you think about like, what do you need to do? You need to identify if you're logical or emotional and find a counterbalance. Like you're a really good counterbalance for me because you're very logical.
Yeah.
And then identify, like learn to hold your horses on most things.
Yeah. And I mean, especially with the industry that I've been in my entire adult life, like if you're in the kill zone, left or right, doesn't matter. Get out of the kill zone, like immediately. Like there is no emotion or logic in that. Just make a decision and go with it. So there's that kind of that side of my brain, but in most situations, like I'll go back to my cell phone. Whether or not I get a new cell phone or not doesn't need to, that decision doesn't need to be made right now.
Right.
And I mean, I heard somebody say one time when it comes to major purchases, like they're going to go buy a new car or something like that, wait 48 hours.
Yeah.
Wait 48 hours and see how you feel after that.
You just use the F word.
Did I?
Feel, not, the F bomb, but.
Wait, what?
Feel the F word.
Oh.
Did you get my joke?
Oh, you threw me for a loop there.
No, I froze for a second. No, so I mean, it's identify what you are, find a counterbalance, learn which decisions have to be made now versus longer term, and then know when you need to check yourself. And a good way to check yourself is what? Talk to that counterbalance.
Exactly.
And I think, like, I make a lot of decisions quickly all the time, and they're not consequential ones. It's just what happens when you're doing a business. But on those bigger things, it's worth taking time, because if I make all my decisions emotionally, like, I would spend all my money and probably never actually get my work done.
Yeah, and like I think another thing too is in the whole lead up to this, like with me, like the whole thing about becoming like self-aware of something. I mean, it's definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I'm going to be talking about at your workshop, actually. But, you know, once you kind of become aware of something, you tend to pay a little more attention to it. So
Yeah.
With this one, I've noticed myself paying a lot more attention to not just paying more attention to the emotional side, but using it as part of the logical conclusion.
Right.
Like, you know, going into the office and ranting and raving might get your point across, but is it going to be well received because the person you're talking to is a feeler and you're going to make them want to go in the closet and cry? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that will start to play in as well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the sales training workshops I do,
Mm-hmm.
we're teaching salespeople how to tap into emotion first and then bring in logic. So oddly enough, we're using this principle a different way because to sell, you have to get people's attention. And how do you get their attention? It's not usually by showing them a fact sheet.
Yeah.
Maybe that's your way. Maybe that's what we do for you. But other people, we don't just show them a fact sheet.
Yeah, if you got a graph to go along with the fact sheet, that would be beneficial too. So, yeah, I mean, I think we covered this one pretty well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anyway, I've kind of really enjoyed doing this whole series.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. So, hopefully, April, your workshop, get a lot more video in.
Yep.
More than the last time. But anyway, guys, till next time, bye.